Man like Mark Sullivan, the warrior self. Stay tuned for the thrilling episode. Woo!
A positive mental attitude can clear away all obstacles which stand between you and your major purpose in life.
This is the Snowboard Project featuring Mark Sullivan and the Bead. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project.
Hey, what's up, all you Snowboard Project listeners? A lot of you know and some of you don't, but we just sent out our sticker packs to all our supporters on Patreon, just in time for you to slap a sticker on your new board. We know you're getting your setup dialed, and we know you need one of our stickers right there, front and center. You sponsor us, and we're going to give you so much great content just about real life and snowboarding. But hey, if you haven't checked out patreon.com/the Snowboard Project, you can sponsor us and help us keep bringing you all this great content. We are talking about so much this month. We are talking about snowboarding, bottom line. 2, we are talking about life experiences through snowboarding. 3, we are not only talking about the thrill of winning, but we are also talking about the agony of being defeated. Number 4, we have a weekly news show, and we just bullshit and keep it real in the snowboard industry. We are talking not just about tricks and the next 180 or the 1620 quad. This is bigger than that. This is about experiencing snowboarding for what it is: the adventure, the friendships, the progression on the mountain and off the mountain in life, following your passion in whatever aspect of snowboarding you happen to love. This podcast is snowboarding. It is the guy that is mounting your board right now. It is the guy that is sweeping the tuning room floor, dreaming about 8 a.m. tomorrow, the POW he's going to ride, the road trip he's going to take, the adventure he is going to have, and making the most of every single day in snowboarding. So please visit us on patreon.com/the Snowboard Project and help us keep bringing you all these great stories from snowboarders just like you.
Welcome back to the Snowboard Project. I'm Mark Sullivan.
And I am the Beeve, and we are kicking it off, episode 39 with...
Chuck McLean.
Chuck McLean.
Does that ring a bell for you?
Not necessarily ringing a bell.
Okay, well, he started a group on Facebook called Dig My Quiver. And Dig My Quiver are these guys who are so passionate about the sport of snowboarding, they actually collect snowboards. So these guys have what you would call a quiver of snowboards.
Okay.
Right? So they collect, they trade.
So they just sit there and nerd out about snowboarding. They're just super stoked on snowboarding.
Super stoked on it. And it's all positive. And these guys kind of trade snowboards. They collect them. And it's just a group that I think are some of the most passionate people in the sport of snowboarding who are like, aren't doing it just to get paid and laid.
Quickly, let me just ask you, why is someone like Chuck someone that we should interview on this podcast, even though, he's not a household name and he started this social network, I guess?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because he's not involved for the money. He's doing it because he loves snowboarding like we do.
I would say that is a valid reason.
Yeah.
And we should take a listen.
Yeah, here's Chuck McLean, episode 39.
Welcome to the Snowboard Project, and today's guest, Chuck McLean. Chuck, founder of the Dig My Quiver forum or group, I guess you'd say, on Facebook, and also an artist, graphic designer, sign maker, dad. What else? What else am I missing?
General adventurer, mountain biking. Hiking, camping, canoeing, all the fun stuff. Just basically getting outside.
And you live in Rye, New Hampshire, is that right?
Yeah, seacoast of New Hampshire. My business is in Rye. I live up in Rochester, so a little closer to the mountains.
Okay, yeah. That's cool. And so you do have a real job. I mean, people kind of know you for your presence online, let's say on Facebook. But tell us a little bit about the real world of Chuck.
So I run a sign shop in Rye where I build, like I could do all kinds of signs, carved signs, hand-painted signs. We get into a little bit of the neon and stuff. And I've been running this business since 2001.
Wow.
Before that, I was living out in Jackson Hole and doing the snowboard bum thing out there. And I worked at a sign company where they were still sort of doing everything in the Old West style, hand-carved, gold leaf, and all that stuff. So I kind of picked up on some of those techniques there.
You're actually hand-carving signs with like a chisel, or I'm not sure what the tools are called, but you're like carving them.
Yep.
Wow,
yeah, exactly, chisels.
But you also do graphic design as well, correct?
Yes, exactly.
So how did you learn that?
Well, I started going to college in '92, so it was sort of before computers had really taken over the graphics industry. They were still teaching things the old way with layering, physical layering, amber litho. I don't know if you've heard of any of that stuff before, but so I learned all that. But it was also sort of like the beginning of snowboarding graphics, really sort of getting away from the ski graphic look and getting more into the skate graphics in unique sort of artistic style. So I really at the time was getting into snowboarding and graphic design at the same time.
Okay, so so you basically started with like Photoshop 2.0, something like that, when you started using computers?
Corel Draw, Windows Paint. I would use anything just to sort of teach myself because there was no classes for that stuff at the time.
Right. So did you end up with a degree in fine arts or graphic arts or something like that?
No degree. They had it was a 1-year certificate program that I did. After high school, I was just like, I had enough school, so I wanted to get in and out as quick as I could and start exploring the mountains instead.
Right.
But
and then you went to Jackson.
It was first I went out to northern Idaho and lived at Schweitzer Basin for a year.
That's definitely some outdoorsy area. You got some,
yeah, for sure. There was hardly anyone around at the time, so it was my first real experience with having untouched powder all to myself.
How did you end up in Schweitzer? Because I don't know if there's ever been a photo published or any media coverage of Schweitzer, maybe ever.
Right. Well, I had my cousin was living in Montana at the time, and he was just sort of out exploring around, and he came across this mountain, and he's like, dude, you got to come out here and check this place out. It's amazing. There's no one around. There were people around. I mean, there was a pretty good group of snowboarders out there. Because of course the Northwest had already had quite a good history with just the backcountry and side country. So a lot of those dudes had that same sort of Craig Kelly riding style, like the backcountry stuff, just not in the competition scene, but more just surfing the mountain type of vibe.
Right, but then you moved to Jackson, which is a totally different kind of place compared to Schweitzer.
Yep.
What was why did you move to Jackson from Schweitzer?
Again, I had a friend who was like, you got to get over here and check this place out. So I first went down in the summer, left Schweitzer, drove down there, got a job, got settled, and when winter rolled around, I went right to the mountain, got a job working for the buildings and grounds department because they needed a dog catcher. I mean, this was back in the day when like everyone just brought their dog in the back of their pickup truck to the mountain and left, went up the lift, left their dog there. And the dogs, of course, would just jump out, and they were running around all, the base of the chairs and around the lodge. And it was really becoming a problem. So they're like, Chuck, yeah, we'll give you a pass and a radio. And we just want you to wrangle these dogs in. And it was a pretty easy job. I basically just went around and gave them dog bones and let them keep running around. And I'd go up on the mountain and snowboard for free. And if there was any problems, I had the radio right there. I could hear, if there was a problem, they would radio me, and I'd just go down and take care of the situation.
So you always had a pocket full of like milk bones or something?
Exactly, in a leash.
So where would you take these dogs once you caught them?
They had a crate that I was supposed to put them in, and I think I did crate a dog once, but usually I would just sort of like take the dog, bring him away from the base of the mountain and just hang out with them for a little bit and try and figure out who they belong to, just give the person a call or whatever and say, hey, come get your dog.
You ever get bitten as a dog catcher?
No. No, I'm pretty good with dogs, and I can usually tell when there's one that you don't want to approach. But all the dogs out in Jackson Hole are all super friendly. And,
yeah. So how did you make the leap into working at a sign shop and kind of following that thing that you were a little bit more passionate about, maybe?
There was one sign shop in Jackson Hole called Jackson Signs, and they were looking for somebody to come in, and I had a little bit of knowledge about how to do some of that stuff. Just as an artist in the years before, people had asked me if I would make them a sign, so I sort of taught myself. And anyway, this position opened up, and I took it and learned so much because they were still using all these old techniques, hand carved, gold leaf. They were doing work with glass and mirrors, making like those really beautiful billiards type signs. Mm-hmm. And I learned quite a bit. And when I moved back to New Hampshire, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to open a sign shop and offer all these types of signs that you don't really see anymore.
Cool. And so you moved back when to New Hampshire?
2001.
Okay, so you opened the sign shop immediately.
Yep.
And what made you leave the West to go back to New Hampshire?
It was mostly like Jackson Hole was probably one of the most expensive places to settle down even then. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of rich people were moving in, and there just wasn't that many options for affordable housing. And I wanted to settle down, start a business, get married. That was the time. Mm-hmm. But the crazy thing is, as soon as we moved back to New Hampshire, the woman who I was working for at Jackson Signs decided to move to Texas, and she asked me if I wanted to buy the company. And I was like, man, I just invested all this money in my own company, and I'm kind of got my roots dug in over here. So it was like, a year too late. And my wife had been teaching in the Jackson Hole school system at the time. They were paying salaries based on what the rest of Wyoming had been paying their teachers, even though Jackson Hole is sort of like
3 or 5 times as expensive to live than, let's say, Cheyenne.
Exactly. And also a year after we left, they gave all the teachers their raises. So we sort of just missed the boat as far as settling down there. But we still get back quite a bit. Still love the place.
Mm-hmm. Do you go out to the powwow every year?
I haven't been to it yet.
Okay.
I think this is going to be the winter coming up.
Cool. So then you moved back. You were a snowboarder, obviously, if you lived in Jackson for a number of years. You kind of, I would guess you defined yourself as a snowboarder by this point. Like that's kind of who you were as an individual.
Yep.
And then what was the adjustment like going from Jackson Hole back to Waterville Valley or Loon or some of those mountains?
It was rough at first. I was looking for new challenges, so I actually tried telemark skiing for a season.
Oh yeah.
And and I had fun doing it, but I was like, I think what I want to do here is start exploring more of the places that I never had a chance to before. Like I started getting up to J Peak a lot. Watched that place grow. I started exploring more of the backcountry and hiking around up at Mount Washington. So yeah, just sort of challenging myself with what this place had to offer terrain wise.
What are your favorite three? What are the best three backcountry locations that you've been to on the East Coast?
Obviously Mount Washington. There's the infamous Tuckerman's Ravine, but there's also some really cool shots on the north side of the mountain. There's one called Airplane Gully, which I've fallen in love with. J Peak, there's a lot of side country stuff. There's a lot of Big J is sort of the next mountain over, and you can traverse from the top of the mountain and get some good backcountry there. The Dip, which is side country. So, and then let's see, just as soon as splitboarding started, I just started exploring even like the side country from some of the mountains close by. There's a lot of old ski areas that have been closed for decades that you can still find some runs. So it's been cool kind of like going through old ski maps and stuff and old ski magazines and trying to find some of the mountains that have closed. And check them out. Alpine Ridge is one of them.
Yeah, there's a website, Lost Ski Areas Project or something like that. You must be familiar with that.
Yep. I have seen that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was at one point in time twice as many resorts, and a lot of them just mom and pop single, the one chairlift or rope tows or whatever, and a lot of those are gone today, based on liability and probably a lot of reasons, I'm sure. Have you ever gone up north to like Gasp Bay in Quebec?
Where?
Gasp Bay.
No.
That's like
no.
Supposedly a renowned backcountry location on the East Coast. I haven't been there, but I've done enough research. There's a cat operation there, or at least there was a few years ago when I was checking into it, and thought it might be interesting. So, is it safe to say that you actually ride more powder than ice these days?
No, I look for it more, and like of course every opportunity that comes up, I'm out there, which is one of the perks of being the boss of your own company. But yeah, I mean, it just doesn't snow a lot here, so you get 2 good months where you get March, you get end of February and March, and you really got to take advantage of the powder when you can. But I'm always out there as soon as it snows.
Yeah, sign shop is closed on a powder day.
No, there's 3 other guys that work here that don't snowboard, so they hold down the fort.
Okay.
They surf in the summer though, so they know how it works. When the surf is good, they're out of here.
Right, and then you have to hold down the fort, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did you? Let's talk a little bit about snowboard collecting and how you got into that. I'm assuming you did that before Dig My Quiver. How did you get into collecting snowboards?
Actually, it sort of started with Dig My Quiver. So 2011 is when I started the group, and there were a few other online forums that I had sort of met and talked with people who were basically not necessarily collectors, but just enthusiasts, like to talk about tech and geek out on new stuff. Easy Lounging was one of the websites, but I never really liked the vibe on some of those forums.
Why?
I just felt like there was a lot of a lot of negativity. It was, if you were new to a discussion, you almost felt like you couldn't bring up certain things because there was always some guy in the group that would jump all over you, and it wasn't necessarily me, but I would see that happen with some of the other people, and I didn't really get into that whole vibe. So Facebook at that time had started the group thing, and there was one group, the history of snowboarding, and I started getting to know a lot of people on there, but there wasn't much in terms of talking about new gear and trading setups, pictures of setups and stuff like that. So I started Dig My Quiver, and it was more out of the necessity of just wanting to share stuff and talk about stuff, and knowing that half the people, like half of my Facebook friends, wouldn't care about that stuff, So it's like if I just wanted to post my new setup on Facebook, it's like I might have 5 people who are like interested in that, So I was like, I should start a group so I can, just nobody else has to look at this stuff. And, just except the people who are actually interested in it. So it really took off right away.
How long did it take you to get like 1,000 people in that group?
It actually took a couple years. Mm-hmm. So we probably sat at about 500 people for a couple of years, which was great because you got to know everybody in the group. And then that's when other groups started popping up.
Yeah.
There was,
go ahead.
Yeah. Vintage Snowboard Trader popped up at the time. I actually told Dave Martin, he was part of, Dig My Quiver, and he went to the first Supernatural event from his house. He drove his snowmobile up to Baldface and brought a whole quiver of vintage boards because he knew there was going to be all these pros there. And he got everybody to sign his boards, and then he posted pics on Dig My Quiver. And he was talking about specifically about vintage boards and collecting, and I told him that he should start this group. And he got that started, and that really took off as well around the same time, about 2012, 2013.
Yeah, but it seems like with Dig My Quiver, it wasn't there. There's a lot of talk about vintage snowboards, and like people who collect all of these kind of rare birds, at least today, from the 80s and 90s. But really, it wasn't based on that. It was based on kind of talking about what different boards and equipment you were using, right?
Right. And there's a lot of smaller companies who have, who are members of Dig My Quiver, shapers. So I've gotten to know a lot of board builders through the group. Bigger companies have sort of caught on. They have members in the group, so they're always sort of feeding off the group and getting insights into what people are looking for. It's really almost like the first consolidated group of snowboard consumers.
Right.
And it's a hub for these companies to sort of kind of sneak in and see what everybody's talking about, what people are stoked about. And there's, at first there was really a lot of negativity, people brand bashing. And so we sort of had to establish these rules within the group that we weren't going to tolerate that stuff. We weren't going to tolerate trolls. So we just started booting people.
Yeah.
At the time, I was like, but I still, I still want to have fun with it. I want us to be snowboarders, We generally have like a sarcastic attitude about stuff, and I still want to have that, that that vibe where we can just joke around about stuff and make fun of ourselves and stuff. But just wanted to keep the negativity out.
So how many people did you have to boot before people got the idea that that this is a place to have camaraderie more than chaos, let's say?
Not many. I mean, a handful, 5 or 6.
Yeah, there were a couple of offenders, egregious offenders.
Yeah. Right. And, and I got to know the other guys that were running other groups, and we sort of agreed to kick these people out of all the groups. So like we actually have a group of guys that are the moderators and administrators for a bunch of different groups. I think there's like 4 or 5 different groups now that we sort of run together.
So you run other groups as well?
I just help to, no, I don't necessarily run them, but just help to, make decisions as far as trade ideas, things like that, for how to make the groups run smoother.
Hey, what's up, Snowboard Project listeners? I know you're probably sitting on the couch or in the car or somewhere with another friend of yours who is also a snowboarder who is sitting there scrolling on his phone, on his Facebook, on his Instagram, and he has no idea what a podcast is. So here's what I want you to do. Here's the challenge. You need to walk over to your friend, grab his phone, scroll down and find that little purple podcast button that he has no idea has never opened, and I want you to press it. And you are going to do him the biggest favor of his life right now. You are going to subscribe him or her to the Snowboard Project. And then you're going to rate us 5 stars, and you're going to throw him his phone back and say, "You're welcome." Because you just gave him an awesome gift, the gift of snowboarding, the gift of listening to stories of snowboarders just like him. You just gave him the gift of adventure, of life experience, of learning in the mountains, the gift of shred. They get to listen every week to 3 different stories, a couple from, other snowboarders just like them, or maybe an industry person that will give them the great information they want to know about design, or maybe about, marketing themselves, or maybe about just snowboarding and being a competitive snowboarder. And you're also going to get news, and news that's not just past the, next 180 or the 1620. You are going to hear things about the adventure, the friendship, and you are going to hear about the experiences of doing what you love, which is snowboarding. So I want you to grab his phone, hit the purple button, subscribe him, rate us, hand the phone back, and say, "You're welcome."
And so, really, how would you characterize Dig My Quiver versus Vintage Snowboard Trader? Is there a lot of crossover between those groups, or is it kind of like Dig My Quiver is more about the current stuff you're riding, and Vintage Snowboard Trader's more about the stuff hanging on the wall? How do they kind of shape up and interconnect? Where do they cross over?
Well, they're more like trade sell groups, whereas Dig My Quiver has none of that. It's just a place for people to show off their collections, or talk about their new setups. And so it's pretty useful in that sense. But yeah, we try and stay away from trading and selling because the other groups are set up for that.
Right. So let's talk about your collection. What was the first board you collected? Tell us a little bit about your collection in general of snowboards.
So I first wanted to at least collect one of every board I ever had, because my biggest regret obviously was selling all these boards that I wish I'd held on to.
Yeah.
I think I had 3 different mystery airs at one point, and they're all gone now. I don't have any of them. So, and there's actually one on eBay right now for like $17,000, which is ridiculous, but
right, like a new old stock one or something. I mean, it must be a new old stock or something for that kind of price tag.
Yeah. So my original goal was to at least just get back one of everything I ever had and hang them on the wall. And just having the group Dig My Quiver and getting to know the guys in Vintage Snowboard Trader. It wasn't like it was a competitive thing where I wanted to keep up with some of these guys that had giant collections, but I just sort of became obsessed with having every board I ever wanted as well. Not just the ones that I rode, but like, I remember times when I would be going up the chairlift when I was younger and just being able to look down and identify every single snowboard that everyone was riding.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man, I don't ride that one. God, I wish I had that one. So then I was just trying to get one of everything I wish I had, you know?
Okay, so how close have you come to those goals?
I think I've gone beyond, really. I mean, there's nothing that I'm looking for right now. I just started collecting anything that I see on Craigslist, you know, anything that I know is of value, just to grab it and clean it up and, you know, give it the respect that it's due and file it away in the, you know.
So how many boards do you have in this collection of yours?
I'm probably up to like 150 now, maybe.
Whoa. Okay.
Which is a pretty small number. I mean, like guys like Tim McKenzie, who's the Arbor Air Blaster rep from the East Coast, he's got to have 1,000 boards by now.
Wow.
I mean, it's crazy. He doesn't even really collect anything from the 80s. He's like a 90s, because he's got a 90s collection.
4-hole pattern.
He's got pretty much, yeah. I mean, and he's got probably the sickest lid tech collection I've ever seen.
Okay, so tell me about like your top 3 boards that have like some kind of personal connection to yourself, and then top 3 boards that are just the rarest in your collection.
Man, that Tailgate Alaska board is pretty special to me.
Is that the first board you actually designed, like graphic wise?
No. I did. The first one I designed was maybe mid 90s when Seth Miller went from riding for Nitro. He moved to Elon, and at the time that snowboard company was called Nail.
I remember that. Nate Otis ran that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So I did Seth Miller's first pro model for that brand. But yeah, that Tailgate Alaska board with the knife is pretty special to me, because that was the first board that I designed that really was recognized a lot more widely. And then
copied.
the fact that I got to go to Alaska. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the fact that I got to go to Alaska and ride that thing was probably one of the highlights of my entire life.
Cool.
So that one's pretty special. Yeah. My Ouija twins, basically my Burton twin collection is pretty awesome. I got all the 95 twins, the Martini twins, which were sort of it was right around the time where they were switching from 5-hole to the 3D pattern.
Yep.
So they put out a few boards that still had that pattern, just so they could get rid of bindings. So they're pretty rare. I got both of those, and all the blacktop twins that were sort of prototypes at the time. So yeah, that collection I've completed, and that one's pretty special to me.
Cool.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I've made a few other boards. Some of the when the LibTech started coming out with the do-it-yourself blanks,
Mm-hmm.
I got way into that. So I've got a few boards that I've built on my own that are pretty awesome.
Cool. So how many boards, like new boards, do you get every year, as far as like ones that you're going to rotate through your current quiver?
Probably, 6 or 8 new boards a year.
Are they all different? I mean, why do you have 6 or 8 different boards? Is it just because you like the graphic on it, or are they all different, designed for different purposes?
Yeah, some are graphic. Yeah, I buy them for the graphics, but others are, mostly just trying out different shapes and stuff. There's a lot going on with boards, as you know, these days. Where, for a long time it just became sort of stagnant. You couldn't see the difference. It was all construction-wise in the core that made the difference with boards. But now it's like you can see the difference in the shapes. So it's, a day doesn't go by where I'm like, man, I want to try that thing, or I want to ride that thing.
Cool. So, what are your current favorites? Like the one that you're going to mount up first for next year?
Let's see. Full Bag has a couple of really nice boards. What else am I going to ride?
And he's an active part of the community, right? Full Bag is. He's like he participates in Dig My Quiver, and you actually have like a one-to-one relationship with the guy building those boards.
Yeah, exactly. Another guy, Doug Smith, is a shaper for Black Sheep Snowboards in New Jersey. He's got a park board that I really want to try. And I have all these boards in hand, but of course I'm just waiting for snow. Mikey Franco is going to be building me a board.
Cool.
And a lot of these boards too, I like sharing with other people in the group, dudes that I can trust, obviously. But I like...
By trust, you mean they are not going to hit rocks and they're going to send them back when they're done?
Exactly.
Gotcha.
But I like passing boards around just so other people can get a chance to try these out, and hopefully get some more exposure for some of these smaller board builders.
Do you gravitate now more towards these smaller micro brands and say like the macro brands where they'll produce 500 of one size, one model? Or more?
Not necessarily. I think it has more to do with just being able to talk to the person who's in charge of that company or working for the company. I think that's usually what sparks the interest in wanting to try the board. So obviously people who are in the group as well.
Mm-hmm. So do you know like Jake Burton? Because I know that you've ridden some Burton boards. Do you know Jake?
I've met him a few times. I've never really had a chance to talk to him about boards and about the group or anything.
Do you think that he knows you as far as like you're kind of a known quantity now in the world of snowboarding beyond maybe the Timberline Sign Shop?
Maybe. I did a lot of work with Danny Davis and Jack Matrani, getting their Friendly Gathering summer concert off the ground for the first 5 years. Did all their graphics, and the first couple of years it was small enough where you would camp out right next door to Jake and hang out with him for the night. So he might remember me. I don't know.
How about JG? He's like one of the legendary shapers. He came up with the fish. Do you talk to him or know him at all?
Yeah. A couple years ago, we had a Dig My Quiver meetup at Stowe, and TK and JG were nice enough to meet us on the mountain and show us some of the backcountry shots up there at Stowe. So we met up a couple mornings in a row, and they took us for a hike. And JG is just one of the nicest, smartest people that I know. Really good rider. At the time, he was riding a woman's model family tree board and just ripping the thing.
By a woman's model, you mean it was just a shorter board, or what made it a woman's model?
Well, that's the question, though. Is I never think that there is a big difference between them, but I think he was just testing out the shape and flex, and I think he'll pretty much ride anything just so he knows what's going on with the board.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that, just he probably has just such a wealth of knowledge, has designed so many boards. He must have ridden just about everything under the sun,
Right. Right.
Do you ride some of those old vintage boards? Do you mount them up and wax them up and take them out on the mountain?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. There's actually a vintage snowboard plate, the V plate, that you can buy now, and trying to think who that was that started that. But anyway, yeah, it's a phenolic piece of material that has all these different hole patterns in, so you can mount it to an older board, and then it has a 4-hole pattern in it, so you can put modern bindings on an older board and take it for a rip.
So do you have some of those?
So yeah, I took yes, yeah. Yeah, I have, right now they're mounted to a Burton Safari Comp 2 165.
Nice.
Super fun board.
Yeah. It's funny because like race boards really, went by the wayside and
Yep.
but they are fun. I wouldn't probably ride one every day, but I would say that it would be fun to get out and just rail turns as deep and hard as you can,
Right. Yeah.
And I think that people are bringing that back, but it's still, those boards aren't really widely available for people to even try out to know what that feels like.
Yeah. And so the companies that are still making some of the race boards, there's really not a huge clientele for that stuff. So it's either competitors, but there's not many guys in the group that just ride race boards. So there's not a lot of talk about it, but there are a few. But when we get together, some guys in the group, we get together at the mountain, a lot of times we'll either bring vintage boards or we'll bring crazy race boards or something just to have fun, ripping them together. Mm-hmm. So last time we did that, I rode a ASIM race board with just soft freestyle bindings on it because I don't have any hard boots or anything. And it was a powder day, and it was a riot.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of those race boards, they had like metal mounting plates in them. So really, race boards had pretty much died by the time the 4-hole pattern had come around. And so there really aren't a lot of 4-hole pattern race boards out there that could be ridden with soft bindings, which actually would be a fun way to do it. Maybe we'll get some of those made because it would be fun to ride that kind of board, Not every day, but hey, we're talking about quivers here, so why not, right?
Right.
That could extend.
And seems to be a lot more events now that just regular snowboarders are able to do a lot more banked slaloms and cool competitions like that where you could ride a race board just for fun,
Yeah, I bet those could actually do pretty well in like a bank slalom type format. Till you go fakie, then you're in trouble.
Exactly.
Okay, so it sounds like basically every day of your life you're thinking about snowboards to some degree or another. How much time are you spending on the Dig My Quiver forum, like moderating it, or the group, I guess? How much time do you spend a day in there?
I take a little break from it in the summer. Check in a couple times a week. But yeah, I'm literally surrounded by snowboards all the time. At my office, I've got 40 boards in my office, a bunch hanging on the wall. My workshop is in a barn out behind my sign shop. I've got a few decks out there hanging up on the wall, so they're everywhere.
So you can't get away from
my wife, obviously. No.
What do your kids and wife think about all this?
Oh, they think it's crazy. My wife, I mean, they appreciate it. They let me do it. But, they're like, Dad, why don't you sell, 50 snowboards so we can take another vacation or something? They want me to spend the money somewhere else.
Right. And if you're buying 6 or 8 boards, do you get free boards? Do people give you free boards now that you're kind of like a guy kind of, steering the ship, so to speak, as far as the quiver people of the world?
Yeah, occasionally. I mean, not free in the sense where, I wasn't involved in one way or another, but in the development of it or the ideas for it. Burton actually gave the group 3 family tree boards last winter just to demo. But the group was involved in sort of deciding what they should make.
How do you
Leslie
mean?
Betts.
How do you mean?
Leslie Betts at Burton sort of used a crowdsourcing within the group to get ideas from people. Like what shapes should we do? What boards should we bring back? What sizes are people looking for? Things like that. And so, I mean, it was one of the hugest threads that we've ever had. So she took all that information, all the comments, back to Burton, and they came up with a line of snowboards that they called the Family Tree Reunion. And basically it was boards that they had already put out before that were discontinued. And people in the group were like, you should bring this board back, but can you make it a little bit wider or, longer for guys with bigger feet? So that was sort of the direction that they took.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of those boards? Like a brushy? Is that part of that? The reissue brushy, like fish board?
I definitely think that we had an influence on a lot of the reissues that are coming out.
Yeah, it seems like a popular trend right now, is like reissuing boards from the 90s.
Yeah. There's a guy who just bought the Kemper brand because it had finally expired. And a guy from New Hampshire, and he's working down in New York now, but he bought the Kemper brand and he revived a few of the old graphics, different shapes. So it's not necessarily a reissue, but he's got some Kemper boards coming out this year. They're all pre-ordered.
Is that Steve Hunt?
Yes.
Nice. Jib. That's what we used to call him back in the day.
Hunt,
yeah, I remember him from back in the day. He was one of the, there was like a crew of New Hampshire guys like Brian Knox and Hunt and a whole bunch of guys who kind of went to Plymouth State. That was kind of like a gathering point for those guys, But there was definitely a vibrant scene back then. How about Lego boards? He's one of your locals there. Have you ever tried one of his boards?
I haven't yet. One of the guys that I ride with all the time has one of his boards and loves it. But I see Scotty around once in a while. He was doing some photo shoots up at Gunstock last year. A buddy of mine, Randy Williams, was got some killer shots at him, and saw him at Mike Baker's bank slalom at Waterville Valley. I think he won that one last year. So he just came in and just killed everybody. Made it through the gauntlet, no problem.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. The gauntlet has lived on at the Mike Baker bank slalom. It looks like a royal, a shit show, a nice kind of shit show though, where everyone's having a good time. No one's out to hurt anyone, but man, it's probably pretty hectic.
It is, yeah. We kind of toned it down this past season. The mountain was a little upset with us the year before, and so we definitely want to keep it going. So the idea this year was just to make the course a little bit more challenging. There was a big giant mogul field at the end that destroyed a few people, and of course when the pros went through, there was snowballs flying, but there was no felled trees in the course this year.
Yeah. I've seen some interesting pictures of that event from the past, Yeah.
It
looks like a lot of fun.
Hey folks, if you're tuning in to us still, please take a minute to go to Patreon.
Wait.
What?
Is there like some question that they wouldn't still be tuning in?
Well, if they're still listening, they can go to patreon.com/the Snowboard Project.
But you're still staying still.
Still.
Like, they
They might
not
have just
even
listened
made
to
it
the
this
first
far.
5 minutes. Yeah, they
Okay.
might not have made it this far. So.
Okay.
But I just want, if you're still listening, okay, if you're listening, go to patreon.com/the Snowboard Project, and we're going to count on you guys to support an independent voice in snowboarding media. It's how we're going to keep this thing advertising free and have a voice that is not affected by the advertisers.
So now you're pretty much like one of the guys who's probably seen just about every kind of board out there. Are there any boards that don't exist that in your mind should?
Oh man, that's a good question. Boy, I don't know. I don't think so. I think all the good ones already exist. That's one of those questions that I think the companies are really looking for a good answer on that one.
Yeah, and I think that maybe there can be like, a crossover between the different kinds of boards, that doesn't exist right now. Taking, I don't know, like a short, fat, and, a race board, putting them together, short, fat race board. Who knows, right?
Right.
There's different kind of permutations that don't exist of just crossing over different kinds of boards. So who knows?
Well, I think Fullbag is doing that because he was really building more of a race style board that was meant for powder. So his boards are powder surfers with bindings, but they have, there's quite a race style look to them, and they're long for powder boards. You've got like 170s and 180s that he's offering up, but he just put out a short board that's coming out this year, and it's got some of the same sort of race style side cut technology, but it's his first freestyle board.
So it's like a full twin, but with like a deep race kind of side cut.
Still directional. Short directional board, but it's powder, carving, and freestyle hybrid. And actually, the first day that his demos went out, somebody won a bank slalom on it last year.
Really?
Yeah,
that's cool. So, how much of the time do you get to? How much time do you get to travel, like to meet these different guys in the forum? I mean, it sounds like you've had gatherings before where people meet up. I'm sure they happen all over the country because it's just like, I know a bunch of guys in Alaska who are part of that. Like Nick Campiglia is like one of the, I see him posting there all the time in the Dig My Quiver forum. And I know he's a big LibTech collector,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've gotten to know so many people from all around the world. And what's great about the group is you can pretty much take a vacation anywhere, go to any mountain now, and just sort of chime in the group and say, hey, I'm going to be at such and such a place this week. And you'll hook up with 5 or 6 other guys.
Right. It's like you're an instant local.
So it's all good people.
Yeah. And you're like an instant local. You don't have to take the time to figure out where to go riding. They'll just show you their goods because you're friends with them.
Exactly. So that's definitely one of the definite positive things about the group.
Okay, so when did Dig My Quiver become kind of like almost like a brand? Like I see stickers now, I see maybe T-shirts. I've seen a bunch of different stuff with like Dig My Quiver being branded. When did that come about?
In the beginning, I mean, stickers and snowboarding have always gone together. So. I mean, of course, as soon as it was a group of 10 people, we had to have a sticker. And I'm not necessarily building a brand out of it, but I think that's sort of the direction it's going in because there's so much demand for DMQ swag now. Mm-hmm. I built a website last year and I'll make a few T-shirts and face masks and whatnot once a year and usually sell out in like a week. But I'm not like jumping into it full force as a brand. Mm-hmm. I just want to keep sort of the family vibe about the whole group and not try and disconnect myself too much just looking for money.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing. It's a community first,
Right.
And
Exactly.
And that's the thing that kind of is kind of unique and really, compared to traditional media, it's really definitely like a family type vibe. Even though now there's like 8,000 people in Dig My Quiver, it seems like people really have a nice way of communicating about the equipment, and really from the consumer side, less so than like the trick side. It really has a focus on product,
Yeah.
Which to me,
one of the things I would like.
Go ahead.
One of the things I would like to do for the group is, since there are 8,000 people, is try and organize some way to get group discounts on equipment or group discounts at mountains and stuff like that. I think just because we are a consolidated group, I think it's totally feasible to
maybe that's how you become a brand, so to speak. It's more like a buying group at a trade show where it's like all these shops come together and buy as a group, right? And so therefore it's like you get a discount based on that, and that makes perfect sense to me. And it's also a unique extension that doesn't really exist right now, which I always like things that are thinking outside of the box,
Right.
So that's pretty cool. So what's next for Dig My Quiver? What are the goals for this year? What are the goals for 10 years from now?
Well, that idea is sort of one of the goals, is to have a membership where we can offer discounts at mountains and on equipment and stuff like that. Maybe a paid membership for exclusive things. I would like to have more interactions directly with the manufacturers. Not myself personally, but I want the board companies to interact with the group as a whole, sort of the way Burton did. I think it's a huge resource for them, and it allows consumers to sort of have some say in what they want for equipment.
Yeah. Would you ever make like Dig My Quiver boards? Like based on like a crowdsourcing kind of model?
Yeah. But what I would want to do is involve some of the board shapers that are in the group.
Right.
Maybe collaborations between, say, Full Bag and Black Sheep, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or garner some excitement with sort of mashups between companies, things like that.
Yep. And so, I guess to kind of change a little bit here, and I'm trying to make this also something where people can learn something. So what are some of the key lessons you've learned over the course of like 30 years of being involved as a snowboarder, or close to that long being involved as a snowboarder? What are the things that you've really kind of taken to heart through your experiences?
Just building a community with the people who weren't on the contest scene, the consumers themselves. I think we're sort of looked over by the snowboard community. And so grouping together has been huge, because not only are we able to like get together with people who are sort of like-minded, but then we have enough exposure where we have connections with competitors and companies and people who are sort of more involved in the industry. So that's been huge, and it's never really happened before, except for with your local group of bros.
Yep, it's on a micro level, not a macro level, and certainly it's gone worldwide with Dig My Quiver.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's the main thing, and we just sort of stumbled into it.
Right. So, all right. So let's wrap things up. Anyone you want to shout out? Who are your favorite guys in the group, or the guys you talk to most in the Dig My Quiver community? Who are the guys you want to shout out? Let's say.
All the Canadian guys are the greatest. Hughes Beauchamp is one of my dearest friends now. Craig Watson, Southern Guys down in South Carolina, has one of the craziest, sickest collections that I've ever seen. South Shred is his Instagram account. You guys should check it out. Tim McKenzie, the Arbor rep, one of the craziest collections, and just super fun guys to ride with and hang out with. And then Jack Cousteau, I got to give a shout out to him. He's the one that came up with the logo idea for Dig the Stoke, Bury the Hate, which is the perfect way to sort of describe Dig My Quiver.
Right.
In terms of the attitude.
Yeah.
And shout out to Jeremy Allen, who runs the Dig My Quiver Instagram account. I think he's gotten that up to like 12,000 followers now.
Whoa.
And he's killing it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So it is really like a community effort. The whole thing is really more than one person just kind of like overseeing it. It's everybody kind of contributing a little bit and making it more than the sum of its parts.
Exactly. And all these guys I met in the group and have become really close friends too.
Cool. So where are you going to have some gatherings if people want to come meet up with some of these guys who are really passionate about the equipment and the riding and just the broing down of snowboarding in the traditional sense? Where can we where are you going to have meetups this year?
We're aiming for Sugarloaf, and we're going to go meet with Seth Westcott and check out the Winter Stick Jam and powwow with Rob Kingwill. And anyone who's out west should definitely come east for the Mike Baker Bank Slalom. And then you got Last Call at Loon, I think, the same weekend. So that's a good time. Tons of DMQ people there.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time, Chuck. I really appreciate it. And thanks for designing those boards for Tailgate. Those are some of my favorite boards, too. So they hold a special place in my heart as well. So thanks for doing
Awesome.
that. Yeah.
Anytime.
Right on. Well, have a great day. And, I'll talk to you soon here. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Sounds good. Bye.
On behalf of Mark Sullivan and the Beeve, thanks for listening to the Snowboard Project. Remember, ride fast, take chances, dream big, and take action. And for God's sake, don't be a... Don't forget to support advertising-free snowboarding media at patreon.com. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project.